Hey everybody out there on the internet. It's Justin with Header Down Home. I've got something to say that I really wish I didn't have to say. I have not been keeping up with videos as much as I should. Um, Mostly because of being lazy. There hasn't been anything wrong until now. In 2021, I bought a snake, an Arcticonda toffee belly, and she has been one of my favorites since she arrived. There was nothing wrong with her. I did full 3 months at the time, which was the standard of quarantine, and crypto tests, which all came back negative. In 2022, I had my coccidia scare, which I don't know why the vets like to say coccidia is coccidia, but crypto is in the coccidia family. And I assumed that if anyone had crypto, they would be dead by now. Demi came back negative. She was not one of the three who tested positive for coccidia, according to my vet. All the tests that I did send in for crypto to make sure that it was not crypto in the coccidia family came back negative for every single snake for 6 months straight. In 2023, Demi had started having some regurgitation problems, and so I kept her from. She was still in general population at this point. I kept her from free roaming with everybody else, and for 3 months straight, I sent out crypto tests, which all came back negative. So she went back into general population. In 2024, I got the larger snake rack that is usually for ball pythons with the clear acrylic tubs from ARS, and I placed her inside one of those tubs, and she was doing very, very well. And after a while, I thought, since she's one of my favorite snakes, and Alice had just passed away, I would like to give her Alice's cleaned out, steamed out, 12% hydrogen peroxide enclosure, because whatever was going on, she died from egg binding, but I figured if there was anything else that she would have had, would have been killed off by that. So she went to that enclosure, and almost immediately her attitude completely changed. She was reserved, unlike her, not energetic at all. She wouldn't bask under her heat. She liked to hide. She kept her food down for a while, and then she started regurgitating. And I did another crypto test, because I was like, this is highly unusual for this to be happening. Came back negative. She kept having issues. She would keep food down, and then she would regurgitate. And I thought it was just the stress of her being in the larger enclosure. So I moved her back to the larger snake rack, clear acrylic tubs, and she kept regurgitating. So I moved her down into the old Reptile Basics smaller rack, and she kept food down, and there was no regurgitation. And her energy came back, her attitude came back, and I thought, this is good. It must have just been the change of atmosphere. And then she started regurgitating again. So I moved her, after 3 regurgitations, I moved her down to fuzzies, and she was keeping those down. And then yesterday, a couple days ago, I had fed her, let's start over on that. At the beginning of last week, I had fed her fuzzy again, which she did not regurgitate, and then 4 days later I fed her a hopper mouse. I tried to up her on her food size again because she was doing so well, and she regurgitated that. And not only did she regurgitate that, she regurgitated a mostly digested fuzzy, which would have been fed to her at least 4 to 7 days ago. So I have been keeping record of this on one of the breeder forums or groups on Facebook. And the recommendation was to swab the regurg and send it in overnight, which is what I did. And I just got the results back, and Demi is positive for Cryptosporidium Serpentis. Just devastating. I tried to record this video a couple times, but I started tearing up. I don't know what I'm going to do with her, because she's one of my favorite snakes. I don't know what this means for me, or if I'll continue breeding. Um, I don't know if she's had this since she's been with me, but she, when she tested negative back in 2022, she was situated between in the snake rack between three of my favorite snakes, which I'm gonna test all of them again. Due to the two egg binding incidences that I had earlier this year with both Pogo and Lady, I am extremely strapped for cash. So it's probably going to take a while. The only saving grace on this right now, even though I have basically the snakes are still in close proximity, but not super close proximity, is that the babies that have been hatching are in a separate room, a closet basically attached to this room, and I never go from adults to babies, and I do not go from snake to snake and handle them at different times. Once Demi started regurgitating, I started treating her as if she had a fatal disease. That's maybe one more saving grace. I don't know if any of the other snakes will test positive, because obviously we didn't catch it before. Another thing I can think of is if they start to exhibit symptoms such as regurgitation. That seems to have provided the most accurate result, because she had at least almost 10 tests over the years, and they all came back negative. So if you can't rely on the tests, what can you rely on? For all we know, crypto's floating around in other people's collections, and they just don't know. I've done 6-month quarantines starting in 2022 at the very beginning, before I even got the coccidia diagnosis from my vet, who was just doing a visual inspection. All the other snakes, the 3 snakes that were diagnosed with coccidia, visually diagnosed by my vet, 2 of them are still alive. The other one was Alice, who tested positive first, and she passed away from egg binding. She was able to regain her weight, keep everything down. She did not have a regurgitation problem until she became egg bound, and then she started throwing up because she could not pass her eggs and her body was going septic. So I don't know what this means. But Cinder, perhaps one of my most favorite snakes of all time, was one of the snakes that tested positive, and Pookie, who is partially brain damaged now because of an incident in brumation, was also one of the ones that tested it positive. So both those 2 will be getting tests. Fecal tests, obviously, because there's nothing else I can do. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for particularly smelly poops, wet, smelly poops. But they have all looked normal, except for Demi. Everything has looked normal. Demi has been having blood in her stool. I'm colorblind, so it's really hard for me to tell sometimes when something is red, but bright red is pretty noticeable. So that was the thing that kind of tipped me off this time. Just wanted to be transparent, and I'm going to have to try and find people who can advise me what to do from this point on, because I just don't know. I'm also going to call Dr. Stahl once again. I asked him when I visited him down in Virginia, when I personally delivered Pogo to him for her surgery, if he knew of any treatment or anybody or any research labs who are taking in snakes who have been diagnosed with either form of crypto that is fatal to them. Either, I think it's Varani, which is the gecko version, or Serpentis, which is the snake version. And he said no. So I'll see what he recommends. But obviously, unless I want to keep Demi and try to make her healthy and just stop as a breeder. By healthy, I mean nutritional supplements, keeping her clean all the single time until, all the time until she passes. Unless I want to do that, she'll probably have to be euthanized. And unfortunately, I've looked into euthanasia, and there's no humane way to do it, from what I've seen. They use heart picks. They crush the skull. And if they use gas, it takes hours and hours and hours for the animal to die. I don't call that humane. Try to keep you updated.